My name is Laura, and I'm 28. Growing up, my family always referred to my younger brother Ryan as special. He was born when I was 6, and from the very beginning, everything in our house revolved around him. Mom and Dad were constantly focused on his delicate health. Even the smallest things, like leaving a window open, became a potential crisis. "Close that window, Laura," Mom would yell from downstairs. "Ryan might catch a cold." This was my childhood, a constant refrain of Ryan's needs come first. I quickly learned that my role was to make sure nothing disturbed him. The first time I truly understood how different our lives were going to be, I was 12. Ryan had just started elementary school and came home with a runny nose, a minor cold for most kids, but for Ryan, it was treated like the onset of a major illness. "This is your fault, Laura," Dad said sternly, his words cutting through me. "You must have left the door open too long when you left for school." I wanted to argue. Ryan probably got sick from one of his classmates like any other kid, but I knew better than to speak up. I nodded silently and accepted being grounded for the weekend. It became clear to me early on that my responsibilities were different. While other kids were playing after school, I was learning how to dust furniture, vacuum, and fold laundry. "Mom, why doesn't Ryan help with chores?" I asked one day, watching him lounge on the couch, watching cartoons while I folded an endless pile of clothes. "Ryan has a weak immune system, Laura," Mom snapped. "The doctor said he shouldn't overexert himself. Besides, you're so good at these things already." That was the pattern of our lives. If something needed doing, I did it. If something went wrong, it was my fault. When Ryan got a C in math, I was grounded for not helping him study. When he accidentally broke Mom's favorite vase, it was because I should have been watching him more carefully. One day, when I was 16, Ryan borrowed my favorite sweater without asking and spilled juice on it. I complained to Mom, hoping for a shred of fairness. "Laura," she sighed, as if I were the unreasonable one, "you should have put it somewhere he couldn't reach. You know how careless he is." That was the moment I started dreaming of escape. College became my beacon of hope. I threw myself into my studies, channeling all my frustration into schoolwork. Teachers praised my dedication, and my grades reflected my determination to leave. But at home, even my successes were used against me. "See how easy it is for Laura?" Mom would say to Ryan. "You just need to try harder, sweetie." Ryan never needed to try harder because there was always an excuse ready for him. And if he failed, I was there to pick up the slack. When I graduated high school, I assumed college was out of the question. We weren't well off, and I figured any savings would go to Ryan. I resigned myself to working at the local diner while taking community college classes. But the night after my graduation, everything changed. After the ceremony, Mom and Dad called me into the living room. Ryan was sprawled on the couch, glued to his phone as usual. "Laura, sit down," Dad said, his tone unusually serious. My stomach clenched. Here it comes, I thought. The lecture about responsibility, about helping the family, about sacrificing my dreams. Instead, Mom reached into her purse and pulled out an envelope, sliding it across the coffee table toward me. "We've been saving," she said. Inside was a bank statement in my name, showing enough money to cover 4 years of tuition at a state college. I stared at it, stunned. "But I thought this was for Ryan?" Mom gave a small smile, glancing briefly at him. "Ryan might not go to college? We thought this money would be better spent on you." For the first time in my life, I was being given something Ryan wasn't. It felt surreal. Dad leaned forward, his elbows resting on his knees. "But we need you to promise us something," he said, his voice firm. "When you graduate and get a good job, you'll help the family. Don't forget about your brother." "Of course," I said quickly, still trying to process the moment. "I promise." Ryan suddenly stood up and stormed upstairs, slamming his door. Mom sighed but didn't follow him, a stark contrast to the way they usually coddled his every mood. That fall, I packed my bags and headed to state college 3 states away. For the first time, I felt freedom, true freedom. I could open windows without anyone yelling at me and focus on my studies without being interrupted to do chores or watch Ryan. College was everything I dreamed of and more. I studied hard, made friends, and embraced the independence I'd craved my entire life. 2 months before graduation, I received an offer for my dream job, a position at a prestigious firm in the city with a salary I couldn't refuse. When I told my parents, they were surprisingly understanding about me not moving back home. I found a small apartment near the office and settled into my new life. Our family calls became a weekend routine. Conversations always circled back to Ryan, how he was still finding himself and struggling to decide on his next steps. For the first time in my life, I wasn't responsible for fixing that. Or so I thought. College was everything I had dreamed of and more. For the first time in my life, I could focus entirely on myself. There were no sudden demands to close windows, no endless chores waiting for me, and no constant accusations that I had somehow failed Lily. I could study, make friends, and even leave my laundry in a shared dorm washer without worrying about someone else spilling juice on it. The sense of freedom was intoxicating. I threw myself into my studies, majoring in finance with a minor in economics, and found that I truly enjoyed it. I joined study groups, attended career fairs, and even picked up a part-time job at the campus library to help with expenses. Every step I took felt like I was reclaiming a part of myself that had been buried under years of obligation and guilt. Still, I stayed in touch with my parents. Every Sunday evening, I'd call home, partly out of habit and partly out of lingering guilt. The conversations always revolved around Lily. She's still trying to figure out her path? Mom would say. She's been feeling a little lost since high school ended. You know how hard things are for her. I'd nod along, even though they couldn't see me, and offer vague encouragement. Maybe she'll find something soon, I'd reply, even as I silently wondered if Lily was doing anything to change her situation. 2 months before graduation, I received a call that changed everything. It was from Anderson Global, one of the most prestigious firms in the city. I had applied for an entry-level position there on a whim, never expecting to get a response. Yet, there it was, a job offer. The salary was more than I'd ever imagined making fresh out of college, and the role promised significant growth opportunities. When I told my parents, they were surprisingly supportive. "That's incredible, Julia," my mom said. "We're so proud of you." Dad even joked about visiting me once I'd settled in the city. I found a small but decent apartment not far from the office, moved in, and started my new life. The work was challenging, but I thrived on it. The long hours didn't bother me because, for the first time, I was doing something I genuinely loved. My weekly calls home continued, but the conversations began to shift. Instead of celebrating my successes, my parents seemed more focused on how much Lily was struggling. "She's having a hard time finding work," Mom would say. "It's not easy for her, Julia. You know that." One day, Mom's tone changed. "You work at such a great company," she began, her voice saccharine. "Couldn't you put in a good word for Lily? Maybe get her a position there?" I closed my eyes, already dreading where this was going. How could I explain that Lily, who hadn't worked a day in her life and had no college degree, wouldn't even make it past the first round of applications at Anderson Global? "Well," I said carefully, "we do have some openings. I can send over the application form so she can see what the requirements are." I forwarded the form that evening, highlighting the prerequisites: a bachelor's degree, proficiency in multiple software programs, and at least 5 years of relevant experience. Unsurprisingly, Mom stopped mentioning it after that. Life continued and my career blossomed. I was promoted twice within 3 years and began building up a healthy savings account. I even started toying with the idea of buying my own place. It felt surreal to think about owning something, a space that was truly mine, where I wouldn't have to worry about anyone else's messes or moods. But the calls from home grew heavier with guilt. "Your father's back is acting up again," Mom said one evening. "He can't take on extra shifts like he used to. And the house is falling apart. The roof leaks, the plumbing is outdated, and the walls need repainting." I could hear the plea beneath her words. They needed help. My mind flashed back to the bank statement they'd handed me the day I graduated, the one with enough money to send me to college. They'd sacrificed so much to give me a chance. How could I not repay that? After several sleepless nights, I called Mom back. "I've been thinking about what you said," I began. "I want to help." Mom's relief was palpable through the phone. "Oh, Julia, you have no idea what this means to us. I'll give you access to my account," I continued, keeping my voice steady. "You can spend up to $2,500 a month. That should cover repairs and help with the bills." The silence on the other end lasted so long, I thought the call had dropped. Then Mom's voice returned, thick with emotion. "That's so generous, Julia. We probably won't even need that much, just enough for the basics." I walked her through the setup process, making sure she understood the limit. $500 a month? I emphasized. No more. Of course, she assured me. We'll be very careful. For the first few months, everything seemed fine. I was busy with work and barely checked the account activity. When I did, the withdrawals were modest. $700 here, $800 there. Most of the transactions were for groceries, utility bills, and hardware stores. It felt good to know I was making a difference, helping my family in a tangible way. But then, the withdrawals started creeping up. $900 one month, $100 the next. I told myself not to worry. Home repairs could be expensive, and as long as they stayed under the limit, it was fine. It wasn't until I received a notification for a $2,000 purchase at Luxe Boutique, a high-end clothing store, that I realized something was very, very wrong. 3 years into my job at Anderson Gray, I thought I'd finally hit my stride. I had a stable career, a decent apartment, and a life I could be proud of. My routine was predictable, almost comforting. Work, save, and slowly chip away at my dream of owning a place of my own. I kept in touch with my family regularly, usually on Sunday afternoons when I'd call to check in. These conversations almost always revolved around Lily. "She's still trying to figure things out," Mom would say, her tone carefully neutral. Lily hadn't gone to college or started working. She was, as Mom put it, exploring her options. I didn't pry. For the first time in my life, I wasn't responsible for Lily's choices, or lack thereof. It was freeing to let that burden go. Then one afternoon, Mom called me while I was reviewing a quarterly report. Her voice was sugary sweet, the way it always was when she wanted something. "Julia, honey," she began, "you know Lily's been having such a hard time finding work. Your company is so prestigious. Couldn't you help her get a foot in the door?" My stomach twisted. How could I explain that Lily, who hadn't worked a day in her life and didn't have a degree, wouldn't make it past the first round of applications at a firm like Anderson Gray? "Well," I said carefully, "we do have some openings. I can send over the application so she can see what the requirements are." Later that evening, I forwarded the standard form to Lily's email. It was clear and unambiguous. A bachelor's degree was required, proficiency in several advanced systems, and at least 5 years of relevant experience. Unsurprisingly, I never heard about it again. Life continued, and I threw myself into my work. I earned 2 promotions in as many years and started building a solid savings account. I'd even begun seriously looking at real estate, attending open houses, and meeting with mortgage advisors. But just as I was beginning to envision a life I could call my own, Mom called again, this time with a tone I hadn't heard before, desperate. "Julia, honey," she said, her voice cracking, "your dad's back is acting up again, and he can't take extra shifts. The roof is leaking, the plumbing is falling apart, we're barely making ends meet." I listened as she listed a litany of problems, each one carrying a hefty price tag. Then came the guilt-laden plea. "After all we've done for you, the college money, the support, you've got to help your family now, Julia. Your sister needs you." I sat on my couch that night, the weight of her words pressing down on me. Part of me wanted to say no, to remind her that I had my own goals and responsibilities. But the guilt was suffocating. They had given me my chance at a better life. Wasn't it my turn to give back? By the next morning, I'd made my decision. I called Mom and told her I would help. "I'll give you access to my account," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "You can spend up to $1,500 a month. That should cover the repairs and help with the bills." The silence on the other end of the line lasted so long I thought we'd been disconnected. Then Mom's voice returned, thick with emotion. "Oh, Julia, that's so generous. We probably won't even need that much, just enough to get by." I walked her through setting up the account access, reiterating the $1,500 limit. "Of course, honey," she said, "we'll be very careful." At first, things seemed fine. The withdrawals were modest, $700 here, $800 there. They mostly came from grocery stores, utility companies, and hardware shops. It appeared Mom was sticking to her promise, but after a few months, the spending began to creep up. $900 one month, $100 the next. I told myself not to worry. Repairs could be expensive, and they were still under the limit. Then one afternoon, I received a notification for a large purchase, $2,000 at Luxe Boutique. I nearly dropped my phone. Luxe Boutique was one of the priciest clothing stores in the area. I'd never shopped there myself, not even when I received a promotion. As soon as my meeting ended, I called Mom. Mom, I said, struggling to keep my voice calm, I just got a notification about a $2,000 purchase at Luxe Boutique. What's going on? There was a pause, then a nervous laugh. Oh, that, she said brightly. My birthday is coming up, and I saw this gorgeous dress. I thought with all our troubles, I deserved a little treat. I pinched the bridge of my nose, trying to temper my frustration. Okay, I said slowly, but please remember the limit we agreed on. I can't afford for this to become a habit. Of course, honey, she replied quickly. By the way, don't forget about my birthday present. As I hung up, something didn't sit right. This wasn't just about a dress. It felt like a crack in a dam I'd been trying to hold together. Over the next few weeks, I began monitoring my account more closely. What I found made my stomach churn. The spending was escalating. $2,000 one month, $2,500 the next. By the third month, they were hitting $4,000, nearly 3 times the agreed limit. I opened a spreadsheet and started categorizing every transaction. The numbers painted a stark picture. While I lived modestly, packing lunches and buying clothes on sale, my parents, or someone in their household, were spending lavishly. Designer clothes, jewelry, high-end restaurants. These weren't the expenses of a struggling family. They were the expenses of someone living far beyond their means. And I was starting to realize exactly who that someone was. For a while, the arrangement seemed to work. I continued sending my parents $1,500 a month, and they assured me the money was going toward necessary repairs and bills. I didn't question it. After all, I was busy with work, juggling a demanding schedule, and trying to build a future for myself. The first few months passed without much incident. Whenever I checked my account, I saw modest withdrawals, $700 here, $800 there, mostly at hardware stores, grocery shops, and utility payments. It all seemed reasonable. I felt good knowing I was helping them stay afloat while maintaining my own independence. But then, things started to shift. The monthly amounts began creeping up. One month it was $900, then $100 the next. I told myself not to worry. Repairs could be unpredictable and expensive. As long as they stayed under the agreed limit, I wouldn't make a fuss. That changed when I received an alert for a large purchase. It happened during a team meeting at work. My phone buzzed with a notification I had set up for transactions over $500. Glancing down, I saw the words, $2,000 charge at Luxe Boutique. I nearly dropped my phone. Luxe Boutique was one of the most expensive clothing stores in their area, a place even I wouldn't dream of shopping at with my carefully managed budget. As soon as the meeting ended, I pulled up my account details. There it was, clear as day, a $2,000 purchase at Luxe Boutique. My heart raced as I tried to make sense of it. When I called Mom later that evening, she answered in her usual cheerful tone. Mom, I began, keeping my voice as steady as possible. I got a notification about a $2,000 charge at Luxe Boutique. Can you explain what's going on? There was a pause, followed by a nervous laugh. Oh, that, she said, her voice unnaturally bright. Well, my birthday is coming up, and I saw this absolutely gorgeous dress. I thought I'd treat myself, just a little pick-me-up with everything going on. I swallowed my frustration. Okay, I said carefully. Just please stick to the limit we agreed on. Of course, honey, she replied quickly. Then she added, almost as an afterthought, by the way, I hope you haven't forgotten about my birthday present. After hanging up, I stared at my account screen, unease creeping in. Something didn't feel right. This wasn't just about a dress. It felt like the tip of an iceberg I hadn't fully uncovered. I decided to pay closer attention. I set up detailed alerts for every transaction and started checking my account more frequently. The pattern that emerged over the next few months made my stomach churn. The spending escalated. The agreed-upon $1,500 limit became meaningless. One month it was $2,000, the next $2,500. By the time I realized how bad it was, some months had reached $4,000. I couldn't ignore it any longer. One evening, I sat down with my laptop, pulled up 6 months of bank statements, and started creating a spreadsheet. The numbers told a clear story, one that made my blood run cold. The charges from hardware stores and grocery shops were there, but they were dwarfed by purchases from high-end boutiques, designer outlets, and luxury restaurants. Someone had even bought a $200 smartphone last month. Mom still used an old flip phone, insisting she didn't need anything fancy. The expenses weren't adding up to the life my parents claimed to be living. These weren't the spending habits of a struggling couple trying to repair their home. They were the habits of someone young, carefree, and reckless. It hit me like a physical blow. Lisa. The realization was nauseating. While I had been pinching pennies and putting off my own dreams, my parents had been funneling my money to fund Lisa's extravagant lifestyle. I spent the next morning pacing my apartment, rehearsing what I would say. By noon, I couldn't hold it in any longer. "Mom," I said when she answered. My voice was firmer than I expected. "We need to talk about where my money is really going." There was a long pause. "What do you mean, honey?" I took a deep breath. "I think you know exactly what I mean. The designer clothes, the new smartphone, the bar tabs. Those aren't your expenses, are they? They're Lisa's." The silence on the other end spoke volumes. Then, after what felt like an eternity, Mom let out a long sigh. "Well, what did you expect?" she said defensively. "We're family. Lisa needs nice things too. She can't help that she hasn't found her path yet." I clenched my jaw. "You lied to me. You told me the money was for house repairs." "We did use some of it for repairs," she interrupted. "But Sarah, you have so much and Lisa has so little. Besides, you owe us. Or have you forgotten who paid for your fancy college education?" There it was, the ultimate guilt trip. I had been expecting it, but it still stung. "I ran the numbers, Mom," I said, pulling up my spreadsheet. "In the past 2 years, you've spent $72,000 of my money. That's more than what you and Dad paid for my college tuition, even with interest. So no, I don't owe you anything anymore." The line went quiet. Then, without another word, Mom hung up. I sat there for a moment, trying to process what had just happened. Then, almost on autopilot, I opened my banking app and revoked her access to my account. As I pressed the confirmation button, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders, a weight I hadn't even realized I was carrying. But in its place, a new resolve began to settle. I was done being taken advantage of. After cutting off my mother's access to my account, I braced myself for what would inevitably come next. It didn't take long. The very next morning, my phone lit up with call after call from my parents. At first, I ignored them, but by mid-afternoon, curiosity got the better of me. The moment I answered, my mother's voice erupted through the line. "How dare you cut us off?" she screamed, her tone a mix of fury and desperation. "After everything we've done for you, this is how you repay us." I tried to stay calm. "Mom," I began, "I trusted you with that money to help with repairs and necessities. Instead, you used it to fund Lisa's lifestyle. You lied to me. You're being selfish," she snapped. "Lisa deserves nice things too. She's had a hard time and you have so much. Can't you share just a little?" "A little?" I couldn't help but laugh bitterly. "Mom, I ran the numbers. In 2 years, you've spent $72,000 of my money, more than you ever spent on my college education. I sacrificed my own plans to help you, and you betrayed that trust." Before she could reply, Dad took the phone. His voice was colder than I'd ever heard it. "You've upset your mother enough, Sarah," he said. "Lisa's been crying for days because of you. Is that what you wanted? To hurt your sister?" "No, Dad," I said firmly. "But Lisa's actions are her own responsibility, not mine. She's an adult now, just like me. It's time she started acting like it." "You're no daughter of mine," he spat. "You think you're so much better than us because you have a fancy job. Fine. If you won't support this family, you're on your own. Don't come crawling back when you realize how ungrateful you've been." He hung up before I could respond. I sat there, staring at my phone, trying to process the venom in his words. For years, I had shouldered their burdens without question. Now, because I refused to be taken advantage of any longer, I was the villain in their story. But their words didn't shake me. If anything, they solidified my decision. I wasn't going to let guilt drag me back into a situation where I was nothing more than a wallet to them. The fallout didn't stop there. A few days later, Aunt Marie called me. She was the family's unofficial truth teller, the one person who'd never sugarcoated things or bought into the narrative that Lisa could do no wrong. "Sarah," she began, her voice hesitant, "I just wanted to warn you. Your parents are calling everyone in the family, telling them you abandoned them in their time of need." I sighed. already expecting this. What are they saying? That you're selfish, ungrateful, and that you cut them off without warning, she explained. They've been painting you as the bad guy, claiming Lisa's the real victim here. I shook my head, anger bubbling beneath the surface. Aunt Marie, they've been using my money to fund Lisa's shopping sprees, nights out, and a $100 or $200 smartphone. Meanwhile, they've done almost nothing to repair the house like they said they would. Aunt Marie let out a bitter laugh. I believe you. I've been to their house, and let me tell you, nothing's changed. The place is falling apart. Your dad won't even fix the broken step on the porch. Hearing this confirmed what I already knew. But Aunt Marie wasn't finished. There's more, she said, her tone growing serious. Lisa's been showing people a letter of recommendation, supposedly from you, saying she interned at your company. Jenny told me about it. She saw the letter and it has your signature on it. I felt the blood drain from my face. Aunt Marie, that's not real. Lisa never interned with me, and I certainly didn't write her a recommendation letter. I figured as much, Aunt Marie replied, but Lisa's planning to use it to apply for a job at Carlton Industries. Carlton Industries was a respected firm, and if Lisa submitted that letter, it wouldn't just be her reputation on the line, it would be mine. If anyone found out the letter was forged, it could jeopardize my career. I didn't waste any time. I called Carlton Industries' HR department the next morning and reported the forgery. I explained the situation, making it clear that Lisa had never worked for me and that the letter was fraudulent. To their credit, they handled it professionally, assuring me they'd flag the application and investigate further. I thought that would be the end of it. I was wrong. 2 days later, my phone exploded with calls from my parents. When I finally answered, my mother's voice was nearly shrill. "How could you do this to your sister?" she screamed. "She was finally trying to make something of herself, and you ruined it." "Mom, she forged my signature," I said calmly. "That's illegal. She was just trying to get a job," Mom cried. "You've always been jealous of her." "Jealous?" I repeated, incredulous. "Jealous of what? That she's spent her life living off of other people while I've worked for everything I have?" Dad's voice cut in, angrier than I'd ever heard him. "If you ever want us to forgive you," he said coldly, "you'll need to start sending us more money, much more than before. Maybe then we'll consider letting this go." That was the final straw. "No," I said firmly, "I don't owe you anything anymore. If you need money so badly, ask Lisa. She's the one you've been spending it on." Before they could respond, I hung up. Then I blocked their numbers. For the first time in years, I felt free. 3 months have passed since I cut financial ties with my family. The initial chaos of their phone calls, messages, and attempts to guilt me into submission has mostly subsided. Occasionally, I'll receive a text or voicemail from a new number, filled with insults or pleas to reconsider, but I've learned to delete them without hesitation. Each time I do, it feels like taking another step toward reclaiming my life. The money I was sending home is now going into my savings account, and for the first time in years, it's growing steadily again. It's amazing how quickly finances recover when you're not carrying the weight of someone else's irresponsibility. I've started going to apartment viewings on weekends, and last week, I met with a mortgage advisor. It feels good to dream about a future that's entirely mine. As for my family, the distance has given me clarity. For years, I carried the burden of guilt, convinced that I owed them for every opportunity they gave me. But now I see the truth. Love and support shouldn't come with strings attached. What they called helping the family was really enabling a system of favoritism and manipulation that left me drained and devalued. I wonder sometimes if they'll ever understand why I did what I did. Will my parents see that their unwavering support for Lily wasn't just unfair to me, but also to her? By shielding her from responsibility, they set her up for a life of dependence and entitlement. And Lily, will she ever recognize the harm she's done, not just to me, but to herself? I doubt it, but I've learned not to let those questions consume me. Aunt Marie has stayed in touch, and she's been a source of comfort through all of this. She's shared updates about my parents and Lily, though I've stopped asking for them. "They're still upset," she said during our last call. "But honestly, Julia, you did the right thing. You can't set yourself on fire to keep others warm." Her words stick with me. For so long, I thought I had to sacrifice my happiness to ensure theirs. But that's not sustainable, and it's not love. Real love respects boundaries and values fairness. The hardest part has been letting go of the fantasy that things might go back to the way they were. My relationship with my family may never recover, and I'm learning to accept that. Forgiveness might come someday, when they take responsibility for their actions and understand the harm they caused. Until then, I'm choosing peace over obligation. Now my focus is on building the life I've always wanted. I've thrown myself into work, earning another promotion that I celebrated with friends who truly value me. I've started traveling more, rediscovering my love for exploring new places. Each trip feels like reclaiming a piece of myself that I lost in the years of bending to someone else's needs. Looking back, I realized this journey wasn't just about cutting financial ties. It was about finding my voice and standing up for my worth. My family's actions taught me an invaluable lesson. Respect and fairness are non-negotiable, even with those you love. Someday, I might reconnect with my parents and Lily, but only if the relationship can be built on mutual respect and honesty. Until then, I'm focused on creating a life that feels authentic and fulfilling, one where I'm not just surviving but thriving. This isn't the ending I envisioned, but it's the one I needed, and for that, I'm grateful.